Okay. Part 4. Circling the shrines. Although we now knew the locations of the shrines, I was too busy with the underground archive to actually visit them. There had to be a workaround of some kind. In an ideal world, I would repeat what we had done for the first shrine and go there with Hildebrand or Hannelore, but that wasn't viable when we were under strict orders not to wander around outside. I guess I wouldn't mind sharing the locations with Lady Eglantine if she wanted to visit them herself. Unable to think of any satisfying ideas, I made my way to the underground archive where Eglantine and Anastasis were once again going to be spending the morning. It was a day like any other, but when I went to enter the archive with my writing utensils in hand... Lady Rosamond, do wait a moment. I turned around and said, "Yes, Lady Eglantine?" She was wearing a smile like a blooming flower, while Anastasis looked quite bitter beside her. "There is a change of plans for today. I must ask you to visit the shrines with us. I wish to see your large-scale cleaning magic for myself, among some other things perhaps." Anastasis then elaborated, "You are the only one who can clean them so quickly." That confirmed it, but this was the will of the royal family, so that's how they're going to play this, This was the consequence of me being so vague with Eglantine. They were going to force me to enter the shrines while watching me the entire time. I really didn't want to believe they would resort to being so forceful, but here we are. There was a sudden heaviness in the pit of my stomach, as though I'd just swallowed a rock, but my options were painfully limited. After hanging my head in defeat, I reluctantly followed Eglantine and Anastasis out of the library with my retainers in tow. I was in my high beast, of course. Anastasis taking us to the shrines on the other side of the scholar building, and there was no way I was going to keep up with the adults on foot. "Rosamond, here," Anastasis said, then offered me a sound blocker. I took it and gazed up at him, only to see him looking back at me in displeasure. "It would seem you kept secrets from Eglantine in that meeting of yours, even after she went out of her way to exclude me. She was despondent last night, you know." "If anyone should feel despondent, it is I. It was outright malicious of Lady Eglantine to ask me questions that my staff prevents me from answering." Saying that I couldn't enter the shrine would have gotten me accused of lying to the royal family. Admitting that I could and that I had acquired a slate wouldn't have done me any better. I would have been deemed an even greater traitor than Detlinde, whose transgressions thus far extended no further than some treasonous remarks. Can I really be blamed for keeping my silence? No matter how much I wanted to hide the truth, I couldn't refuse a royal order. I would need to touch the shrines if they told me to. It depressed me that these two of all people were being so forceful. I never thought that my noble-like response to Eglantine would end with me being made to reveal my secrets. "My apologies," Eglantine said. "I do this only because I am left with no other option." No matter how cutely she apologized, the tightness in my chest remained. I assumed she was looking for a secret technique of some kind that would allow such a swell to enter the shrines, thereby circumventing another war, but I didn't have the answer she sought. At most, I could only suggest that we continue reading the archive's tablets. I certainly wouldn't admit that I wanted to obtain the Book of Messinora, read it, and then use it as a bargaining chip to ensure that Ferdinand wouldn't get punished. "You must have entered that shrine," Anastasis reasoned. "You prayed so often, obtained so many divine protections, controlled divine instruments at will, and performed countless ceremonies. Why even tried to hide it?" "As I recall, it was you who told me to learn how much information is worth and not disclose it freely. Should you not praise me for having taken your lesson to heart?" "Rosamond," he said, his eyes narrowed, "are you going to order me to tell you everything?" "Yes. Anything that you attempt to hide will surely evolve into something monstrous behind the scenes. It is because we have been honest with each other that things have gone well so far, is it not?" I saw no reason for us to change that now. There is no world in which someone as religious as you would not be allowed into the shrines. Instead of commending me for acting like a true noble, he was ordering me not to hide anything from him. Perhaps I am at fault here, since it was my own behavior that has led you to scold me, but let it be known that I cannot provide the convenient solution that Lady Eglantine seeks. I was telling the truth, but Anastasis merely raised an eyebrow at me and said, "I wonder about that." I could tell from his expression that he doubted me, but the only thing I was keeping to myself was a comment much too rude to say. Sigil couldn't enter the shrine because he hadn't been omni-elemental when he obtained his staff. He hadn't been omni-elemental because the royal family hadn't read the documents in the underground archive which detailed the importance of elements. They hadn't read those documents not only because of the colossal death toll of the Civil War and Purge and the abundance of knowledge that had been lost as a result, but also because none of the royals could read or had studied ancient language. To be frank, none of this was my fault. It wasn't because of me that people could only obtain their staffs once, nor was I in a position to change things. Was it really so bad of me to think that Eglantine or Hildebrand should visit the shrines, since they were the only members of the royal family who could plausibly obtain the Grutershite? Nobles would consider that a lot more acceptable than they would it going to someone from Ehrenfest. I can only think of one way for Citruswald to be the next king without being able to obtain the Grucheshite himself. Can anyone blame me for wanting to keep quiet when it's obvious how the royal family will respond to my being able to enter the shrines, I asked. I would rather die than leave my family in Ehrenfest to become the third wife of a man whose second marriage I just recently blessed. So you've learned to use your head, Anastasius muttered. Does this mean you will speak openly instead of waving off my questions? Eglantine giggled. Wearing her usual soft smile, she had completely ignored the I would rather die part of my response. I understand how you feel, Lady Rosamond, but we must avoid war and the sovereignty at all costs. Peace has only recently begun to return. Obtaining the Grucheshite is of the utmost importance. You will assist us, correct? I averted my eyes. Their position made enough sense that I couldn't just refuse, but at the same time I really didn't want to agree. They continued to pressure me with silent smiles as we passed the professor's herb garden by the scholar building and soon arrived at the shrine. So there truly are more shrines, the royal retainer said, unable to hide their surprise. My own retainers were too concerned about my situation to react. Their eyes darted from Eglantine to Anastasius to me. I returned the sound-blocking magic tool to Anastasius and smiled at my retainers. We were simply discussing how to clean the shrines. I climbed out of my panda bus and used a large-scale washing. The filth vanished in a heartbeat, leaving the area positively sparkling. How wonderful, Eglantine said with a smile, clearly impressed. Rosamond, Anastasius added, check to see whether the door is locked. I did as he had instructed, my heart heavy. No sooner had my fingers brushed the door than I was sucked through. Is this the god of darkness' shrine? Just like in Leighton Shafts, there was 13 statues lined up before me. The centermost one depicted the god of darkness himself, wearing a large cape that sparkled so as wonderfully as the night sky. In his hand was a face-stone slate, as expected, but this one was a black rather than blue. It was complete, unlike the one Eglantine had described, so I could clearly already see the text on it. Yes, I should still offer a prayer, just to be safe. Hesitant to reach for the slate without praying it all, I raised both of my hands and my left leg. O god of darkness, O Steroth, the god of stars, O Verberger, the god of concealment, O Verdreus, the god of deliverance, distance me from this troublesome royal family who think only of themselves, and make such cruel demands of me. Praise be to the gods. I was praying out of anger. Among the gods of darkness' subordinates was the god of deliverance, who would ideally take care of the royal family for me. Oh, the text in this slate differs from what I saw in the god of fire shrine. Let's see here. Speak the name I granted thee. Whose name? The god of darkness's? All of a sudden, the name that had been blazoned into my mind during my third-year practical lessons resurfaced. Oh boy, it's going to be annoying. Praise be to Sixantrok, the god of darkness, I said, which caused the black slate to suck out of some of my mana, and the text on its surface to change. Your prayers have reached me, and your worth has been acknowledged. I shall grant you a word necessary to obtain the Book of Mestanora. This word alone, however, will not suffice. A Zent candidate must obtain the words of the other gods as well. I finished reading the text, and the black slate went into me and fused with my internal snap. Once it was gone, Shixantront's word came to my mind. Willideel. An instant later, I was outside the shrine again. My eyes met those of Anastasius and Eglantine, who were staring at me intently, determined not to miss the moment when I was sucked through the shrine, no doubt. I could tell that trying to lie to them and say that it hadn't worked simply wouldn't fly. Well, now there are black lines, I said. Excuse me? Above the shrine, there were now black lines as well as blue. Eglantine and Anastasius followed my eyes and exchanged glances of confusion. I gave them both a vague smile. Shall we visit the other shrines? Eglantine blinked at me in disbelief and looked worried. Will your body hold? Indeed, I am fine at the moment, though I was sure to collapse without my high beast. Part of me wanted to collapse on the spot and ruin their plans out of spite, but Leslie meant that I wasn't using much stamina at all. I wasn't using much mana either, unfortunately. That side path will get us to the next shrine sooner. I called over to Anastasius and Eglantine as Eglantine and Anastasius went to return to the scholar building. They turned to me, at which point I gestured toward a thin track leading toward the forest. It seemed to shine for me, but most likely didn't for anyone else here. It was presumably the road the Zent candidates of the past had used to circle the shrines. Anastasius squeezed his eyes shut, then opened them again. Climb into your high beast, Rosamond. We will go to the next one. Then, without a moment's hesitation, he started down the forest path. He must have gathered the location of the next shrines, in part thanks to my saying that they were at equidistant intervals around the Royal Academy. As we made our way through the forest, Anastasius handed me the magic tool again. He confirmed that I was holding it and then said, my brother will take you as his third wife. That will solve everything. No, it won't. As eager as I am to read a book belonging to a goddess, I don't want to marry Prince Sigiswald. Yes, this suggestion would solve everything for the royal family, but what about my own wants? Eglantine does not want to be the reason for another war, and she fears becoming the next Zent. If she obtains the Grucheshite, the top-ranking duchies will all move at once, beginning with Klassenburg. Now he was really ticking me off. He was thinking about granting Eglantine's wish and nothing else. Indeed, neither the royal family nor the sovereignty will suffer if you thrust this war upon me and make Ehrenfest accountable to the top-ranking duchies. But how do you really think we would roll over and accept that? I already have a fiancé in Ehrenfest, and my intention is to remain there. Yes, Anastasius remarked, you said as much during that exchange with Dunkelfelger. I could tell from his tone that he still wasn't going to budge. I pursed my lips at the two royals, so in short, neither of you care about Ehrenfest in the slightest. Eglantine looked at me. We do not wish your duchy ill, but its suffering is a small price to pay to avoid war and the sovereignty. You must understand that, surely. As it turned out, she felt as personally disconnected from Ehrenfest as I did from the sovereignty. Above all else, Anastasius continued, I must prioritize Jurgen-Smith, the sovereignty, and the royal family. That I would show such deep concern for Eglantine should go without saying. If my suggestion today is necessary to soothe her heart and ease her concerns, then what else can I do? Ehrenfest may suffer, but only Ehrenfest will care. It was truly embittering to hear that the royal family cared so little about my feelings, especially after I'd agreed to do so much for them. Anastasius had outright admitted that he would disregard me entirely for the sake of those he cared about most. I mean, wouldn't you do the same thing? If you really mean to say that Ehrenfest should deal with its own problems, then does the same logic not apply to the sovereignty, I asked. In the event that Lady Eglantine obtained the Grucheshite, Klassenburg would support her, and the Sovereign Temple would no longer be able to protest. Imagine how much more devastating it would be for the book to end up in the hands of someone not in the royal family. Please refrain from poaching Ehrenfest's Archduke candidates one after another. Be careful, Rosemine, Anastasius warned me with a glare. You speak above your station. I glared at him in turn. You told me not to hold anything back, Prince Anastasius. If you are going to order me by royal decree to marry Prince Sigiswald, then at least return Ferdinand to Ehrenfest. Losing him has left us all in a dire strait. That is not an option. Ahrensbach would collapse. Hello? Ehrenfest would collapse, you idiot! Ferdinand and Rosemite are the ones with the most mana in Ehrenfest. I squeezed the sound blocker, furious about the disparity of our treatment. You certainly are quick to side with Ahrensbach. Should it not be made to deal with its own problems? That was your stance with Ehrenfest, after all. Tell me, what happened to your promise to treat Ehrenfest like the other duchies that won the Civil War? You agreed to start this during this very Archduke conference. Does the royal family think so little of my duchies and my contributions? If I said yes, and this was simply how the royal family did things, and they wouldn't be anything else I could do. Still, I was so frustrated that I wanted to gnash my teeth and gnaw on my lip. Eglantine smiled at me with a condescending smile, as though she were watching a child through a tantrum. Your contributions are not insignificant in the least, Lady Rosemont, but the fact of the matter is that Ahrensbach is more important and in a far more precarious situation than Ehrenfest. Ahrensbach was a greater duchy from the winning side of the Civil War, and it was currently responsible for half of a work stock. It was vastly more important than Ehrenfest, boasting more land, a larger population, and Jurgen Smith's only open country gate. And it was much worse off as well. At present, there was only 2 adults among its archducal family. 3 if you counted Ferdinand. That really wasn't enough to support a greater duchy. I get that Ahrensbach is suffering from a lack of archduke candidates, but isn't that a result of their weird tradition of reducing all candidates to archnobles every time there's a change of archduke? It seems unfair that Ferdinand and Ehrenfest should suffer because of another duchy's customs. So you mean to tell me that my contributions to the royal family never mattered, I said. My desires were always going to be overruled. That isn't true, Anastasius replied. There are some things we can do and some things we cannot. Your request for us to return Ferdinand may seem feasible, but he is the sole pillar keeping Ahrensbach standing. We cannot risk taking him away without a Zent wielding the Grucheshite. I am not sure I understand. We cannot return Ferdinand to Ehrenfest until we are able to divide Ahrensbach's land, create lesser duchies, and assign them odds from among the other duchies' archducal families. Eglantine nodded. Because there's no Grucheshite to redraw the country's borders, it has fallen to the sovereignty and the greater duchies to manage the territories that lost the Civil War. In this case, if Ahrensbach were to collapse now, there would be no one to take its place or support its land. How do you think Ehrenfest will fare if, as its neighbor, it was burdened with such duties? Ehrenfest was already struggling with its own land after purging so many nobles. We didn't have the leeway to look after other duchies as well. Ahrensbach's crippling mana shortage was the only reason that Lady Detlinde's behavior has been overlooked, Eglantine continued. Lady Magdalena was rather furious when after her visit the other day. Detlinde had apparently been rude enough to warrant her immediate execution. The mana shortage had made it necessary to spare her, but only for as long as she was needed. Her fate was sealed, and that realization shocked me like a plunge into ice-cold water. In that case, at the very least, promise me that Ferdinand won't be punished alongside her, I said. He is only an Ahrensbach to begin with, engaged to a woman he doesn't love, and stuck drinking one potion after another because the king made him choose between that and murdering his own brother. Prince Anastasius, how would you feel if you were put in that same situation, forced to decide between killing Prince Stanislaw or marrying Lady Detlinde? In that case of the latter, how would you feel if you were then executed for her rudeness? Anastasius grimaced at the very thought, then his gray eyes came to rest on me. We will not be able to avoid punishing Ferdinand once he is married, he said provokingly. If you wish to save him from this fate, obtain the Gruterscheit now, while their star binding is delayed. Besides, Detlinde is looking for that dang Gruterscheit. If you find it before her, then you can prevent her from becoming the Exent. I shuddered. It was clear from the look on his face that he wouldn't hesitate to exploit me for his own ends, but I refused to let that stop me. Then would you return to Ferdinand to Ehrenfest? If you can foresee the problems that removing him from Ahrensbach would cause and can think of ways to solve them, then yes, as you will. I won't let Ferdinand be executed alongside Lady Detlinde. That was my chance to save him. It would require me to visit the shrines, obtain the Gruterscheit, and become Stanislaus for his wife, but these were sacrifices I was willing to make. No matter what they demand of me, I'll use the Gruterscheit as my shield and save him. We're here, Anastasius said, bringing an end to our conversation before urging me forward. We were standing before a white shrine. I cleaned it like with the others, then touched the door. At once I was transported inside. This one's for the goddess of wind, I muttered to myself. That slate is her divine color. I could see a statue of a goddess holding a round shield in her left hand and a yellow slate in her right, standing among statues depicting her subordinates. O Shutsaria, the goddess of wind, O Doshnelli, the goddess of couriers, O Dragonor, the goddess of time, O Messinora, the goddess of wisdom. Grant me the book of Messinora so that I might save Ferdinand. Praise be to the gods. Then I took the already completed slate. Your prayers have reached me and your worth has been acknowledged. I, Shutsaria, shall now grant you a word necessary to obtain the book of Messinora. As expected, it showed the same boilerplate text as the others, with the only difference being the goddess's word. The slate fused with the staff inside of me, then I repeated what was etched into my mind. Tidehinder. With that, I was outside again. I checked the door to make sure that it was locked, then returned to Eglantine and Anastasius. Alongside the black and blue lines in the sky was now a strip of yellow, and I could see just about see a complex pattern forming. On to the next one, Anastasius instructed. From this point onward, everyone ride your high beasts. It seemed that doing the entire journey on foot was getting to be a bit much for the others. We all rode down the next path, and our next mode of transport meant we reached the next shrine in no time at all. Again, I cleaned it and then went inside. See, this one must be for the god of life. There was Overlord with his sword and subordinates, but this place was noticeably different from the others. The 13 statues were positioned around a small shrine. Indeed, it was a shrine within a shrine. Wait, is that the Earth Shrine? I wondered. It seemed unlikely that Overlord and the subordinates would guard anything else so intently, but why even bother recreating the Bible this closely? I wanted to sigh, but something compelled me to pray. Instead, I raised my arms and gazed upon Overlord, the god of life. Oh, the slate isn't yet whole. It was only half complete, which made sense now that I thought about it. I seldom prayed to the god of life. The only time I could remember doing so on the Royal Academy was when we were preparing for our bride-taking dinner match against Dunkelfelder. A white pillar had arisen when I was teaching Wilfred how to use the divine instrument. O Overlord, the god of life. O Schneeschat, the god of ice. O Schlaftrum, the god of dreams. O Kukulkalera, the god of cooking. I wonder if praying to Kukulkalera will net me various new recipes. With that in mind, I continued to pray. It wasn't long before I started to feel a bunch of mana get sucked out of me, exactly as Eglantine had described. The slate reached completion just as it became more difficult for me to maintain my stance. A voice echoed in my head. "Oh, your prayers have reached me and your word has been acknowledged. I grant you permission to pray to my wife Geduld." Wait, huh? What about the word for obtaining the book of Messinora? I was at a loss. This hadn't happened in the other shrines, and the door to the inner shrine began open, revealing a statue of Geduld, the goddess of earth. The slate in her hand was complete, probably because of the dedication ritual I performed here at the Royal Academy. But wait, how do I get it? Statues of Overlord and his subordinates were still surrounding the earth shrine and keeping me from going inside. I was pretty sure that even trying to approach would inspire the god of life to cut me down with his sword. A terrifying thought, to be sure. I took and drank one of the rejuvenation potions at my hip as I considered what to do. Can I at least get closer now that Overlord has accepted me? And then it hit me. He had permitted me to pray and nothing more. At no point had he invited me to come closer. I gazed up at Overlord's statue in front of the shrine and entreated the goddess of earth to help me. Please teach me how to obtain the slate. Praise be to Geduld, the goddess of earth. Mana flew out of my ring, then the red slate in Geduld's hand shimmered, disappeared, and reappeared beside the white slate that Everglade was holding. Your prayers have reached Geduld, and your worth has been acknowledged. She and I shall now grant you words necessary to obtain the Book of Mestanora. So Everglade does the talking and the slate giving. He really is protective. Yeah, definitely. He's jealous. It was a pretty bothersome gimmick, but I was impressed that the first Zent had gone to the trouble of encapsulating so much of what was written in the Bible. As I mulled over how meticulous he must have been, the door to Geduld's shrine closed again. I took the white slate from the God of Life's hands. After such an unusual experience, I thought that it might be something unique. Or say something unique, but the text was the same as always, only the given word ever changed. The slate fused with the staff inside of me, and the new word spilled from my lips. Gunch. Next I took an exam of the red slate. This word alone, however, will not suffice, as Zent candidate must obtain the words of the other gods as well. The red slate also fused with my inner staff. Tolerate. Again, I was outside. It felt as though I had spent much longer than usual in the shrine, since I needed to obtain 2 slates this time, but not a moment had actually passed. I gazed up at the sky. Someone thanked me for watching the shrine in the meantime and saw even more colors than before. What would happen after I obtained all the slates? We were forging ahead into unknown territory, and it was honestly kind of terrifying. On to the next, Anastasia said. I shook my head, trying to dispel the fear building up inside of me. It was obvious by now that the royal family would never help me out of mere compassion. I needed something to bargain with them. I'm not scared. I'm going to say Ferdinand. As we continued along the side path, I couldn't help but notice that the way ahead was getting steadily brighter. Just how many of these shrines are there? Audley murmured, her voice tinged with concern. 6, Daniel replied without missing a beat. The swiftness earned him a strange look from Audley, but he had confirmed their locations before our departure. Okay, all we got left is Flutrain and I think the Goddess of Light. There it is, Anastasia says. The next shrine came into view. Rosemine, the usual. I watched the shrine, then went inside while pretending to check whether it was locked. This one's for the Goddess of Light. There were 12 statues surrounding one that appeared to be wearing the Crown of Light. In the center statue's hand was a golden tablet that shone faintly and reminded me of the flames produced by contract magic. O Goddess of Light, O Gebordnung, the Goddess of Order, O Unheilschneid, the Goddess of Purification. O Libeskelf, the Goddess of Binding, I shall do whatever it takes to save Ferdinand, so please offer me your guidance. Please, praise be to the gods. I cast my eyes upon the face-stone slate and, yeah, that figures. Like the God of Darkness, she wants me to speak the name she gave me. It arose in my mind without delay. I'd received the names of both supreme gods during one of my third-year practical lessons. Praise be to Verspredi, the Goddess of Light. The golden tablet in my hand sucked out some of my mana, and the text on its surface immediately changed. Your prayers have reached me, and your worth has been acknowledged. I shall now grant you a word necessary to obtain the Book of Mestanora. This word alone, however, will not suffice. A Zent candidate must obtain the words of the other gods as well. Then, as suspected, the golden tablet fused with my internal staff. I spoke the word given to me by the Goddess of Light. Ostrag. Outside the shrine, I saw that Anastasius was touching the door as well, his brow furrowed in frustration and regret. He must have realized that I was looking at him, because he then adopted a more neutral expression. Done? He asked me. I nodded in response, then he turned to his retainers with a dramatic flourish of his cape and said, to the next one, then. The next and the last. There have been 6 large shrines on the map. We made our way to the final one, then I cleaned it and touched the door. Inside were another 13 statues, the center of most of which was holding a staff in its right hand and a glittering green tablet in the left. That was enough for me to identify it as Flutrain, a goddess powerful enough to wash away Everglade with the stardust of spring using the water from the melted snow, but also kind enough to heal the wound in Geduld. O Flutrain, the goddess of water, O Verdrana, the goddess of thunder, O Hailschmir, the goddess of healing, O Verfurimer, the goddess of oceans. Please wash away the mountain of disasters weighing down on Ferdinand. Praise be to the gods. Even though I'd been riding in my panda bus, I must have been tired from visiting all the shrines of the royal family. I gave a somewhat sloppy prayer, and then took the green tablet. To my surprise, the text on it was different than usual, perhaps because this is the final one? Your prayers have reached me, and your worth has been acknowledged. I shall now grant you the last word necessary to obtain the Book of Mestanora. O great Zent candidate who has obtained the words of the other gods as well, reach out and seize that which you seek. The next part of the process was very familiar. The green slate fused to my staff, and then I spoke the new word that I received. Rumbecker. Having now visited all the shrines, I was given the much-anticipated instruction to reach out and grab the Book of Mestanora. If what the Goddess of Water had said was true, then the Grudershite was right at hand. Believe me, I wanted, but where exactly am I supposed to be reaching? Most suspicious of all were the lines of various colors that had been appearing in the sky as I went from shrine to shrine. I reached up as if to grab them. Come here, Book of Mestanora. What in the world are you doing? Anastasius asked, narrowing his eyes at me. Nothing had happened. Darn! Oh, I simply thought that I should pray in celebration now that the shrines are all clean. It was a random excuse, but it was worth a try. Still, with Anastasius, Eglantine, and their retainers watching me, I uttered a prayer and shot some mana up into the sky. Still, nothing happened. What am I supposed to do? The gods could have been a little less ambiguous. In any case, it was still too early to despair. The underground archive contained more documents about the shrines. Perhaps they would give me an idea of what to do next. But, well, I guess the recognition potion comes first. Cleaning the shrines had cost me quite a lot of mana, and my extended journey had drained my stamina, even though I was riding in my high beast. I wanted to recover both before returning to the underground archive. So I went to grab the kindness-filled potion from my hip. Arlie's expression changed to one of worry. Lady Rosemine was performing all those washings too much for your body to endure. Even if not, I strongly believe that you traveled too far today. Fear not, Anastasia said. That was the last shrine. We shall give Rosemine some time to rest before we return to the library. I waved away Arlie's concern and smiled. I will be fine once I recover my mana. Oh? As I waited for the potion to take effect, the feeling that I was unable to control the mana overflowing within me suddenly began to fade. Little by little, I even started to compress my mana. I could now increase my quantity as easily as before my Divine Protections ritual. I stared down at my hands and tilted my head. Could it be that my staff has grown? Is something the matter, Lady Rosemine? Came Eglantine's voice. She had noticed the look in my eyes and was preferring a sound-blocking magic tool. Anastasius adroitly noticed our intention to have a private conversation and came over, so Eglantine gave him a sound blocker as well with a half-smile. It feels as though my staff has evolved, I told them. What? Anastasius explained. It really is just a feeling. I cannot say whether it is true. But do you remember how the staff I obtained in my first year no longer suited me after I performed the ritual for obtaining divine protections? I do, Anastasius replied with a nod. I opened and closed my hand. The tablets one acquires in the shrines are very much like divine wills. After obtaining them all, I gained superior control over my mana. So one can change one's stat by obtaining the shrines for tablets, Eglantine mused aloud, then beamed a radiant smile. That means there might still be hope for Prestigious-Wald. Might. It was much too early to rejoice, in my opinion. One had to collect face stones and continually offer mana at small shrines to obtain the protections of the primary gods. And we didn't even know whether obtaining them through a repeated ritual would permit one entry to the larger shrines. He had a long way to go in either case. That is a long and uncertain road, I said. He would need to pray at the small shrines, repeat his divine protections ritual to secure the protection of each primary god, then return to the Garden of Beginnings to improve his staff. I do not know whether the last step is even possible. Such matters are in the hands of the gods, so I can accept no responsibility for them. Still, it is better than having no hope at all, Eglantine replied. Her dazzling smile almost won me over, but I shook my head to drive away her false charms. Lady Rosemine? I finished circling the shrines, but what now? I asked, changing the subject. We should return to the underground archive, Anastasia said. Fourth bell is fast approaching. Everyone under high beast. I returned the sound-blocking magic tool and climbed into Leslie. Then we all started making our way back to the library. Ah! Once we were in the air and above the trees, I saw the colored lines connecting the shrines had formed a giant magic circle. We weren't high up enough for me to see it all, and I couldn't tell what it would do when activated, but it appeared to be covering the entire World Academy, with the central building quite appropriately at its center. The circle was probably focused on the farthest hall in particular. I didn't know what was happening, but I could tell there was something extreme. My heart pounded unpleasantly in my chest. Okay, let's see. Really? 28 minutes? Wow. Okay. Deeper into the underground archive. I will need to inform Father that you have visited the shrines and speak with him about what comes next, Anastasia said. After bringing me back to the underground archive, he and Eglantine were going to have lunch and then attend an afternoon meeting. Prince Anastasius, were your actions here today done in secret by chance? I would not say that, but I am aware that I may have gotten a bit ahead of myself. Really? Just a bit? Anastasius tried to be expressionless, as was so common among nobles, but I could see the worry in his eyes. At the very least, he was much easier to read than Ferdinand. He and Eglantine were really obstinate today. Could it be that something happened in the royal family? Aside of my own optimism, even now I was trying to find a reason to trust them, and descended the stairs in the underground archive. Schwartz and Weiss were standing on either side of the transparent wall, beyond which Hildebrand and Magdalena were already at work. Hannelore must have been resting, because she was nowhere to be seen. Our retainers were preparing lunch, but they stopped to welcome us when we arrived. We will be returning to the villa after speaking with Lady Magdalena, and Anastasius announced to his own retainers after reaching the bottom of the stairs. There is much we will need to discuss with Father and my brother. Contact them at once. Anastasius and Eglantine's retainers sent out ordinances, started to pack some things, and told Magdalena's retainers to summon their lady. I passed through them and headed into the rest area where I found Hannelore. She set down her teacup and gave me a warm, healing smile. Welcome back, Lady Rosamund. Have you finished cleaning all the shrines? Indeed, I cleaned the last one just a moment ago. Weiss then hopped over to my surprise. He seldom left his post by the transparent wall while we were visiting the archive. Weiss, what's the matter? Handler asked, blinking her bright eyes. You moved so suddenly that I thought something had happened. The shoemail offered no response. Instead, it came straight over to me, took my right hand, and said, Follow me, milady. Huh? Weiss? Before I could ask where, I realized that there was only one place the shoemails would take me after I finished praying to all the shrines. The next location on the journey to obtain the Book of Messinora. I swallowed hard, then saw Schwartz pushing Hildebrand out of the archive. Schwartz started telling me to leave all of a sudden. Hildebrand cried, What in the world is Rosamund? Everyone stared at the shoemails for their strange behavior and at me for being involved with it. I guess I should keep going. I turned to Anastasius, who gave me an affirming nod with a stiff expression. His gesture meant the royal family's permission, so I went into the archive with Weiss. Schwartz took my left hand as soon as I entered. Transcribe, milady. I didn't even need to ask what. The Book of Messinora was no doubt awaiting me. Schwartz and Weiss guided me to one of the room's right walls and touched a recess in the surface. My mana was sucked into it. A magic circle sprang to life, like when we had unlocked the archive, and an opening appeared. Well, it looks like this is a path. I turned to gauge the others' reactions, only to realize that the transparent wall separating us had turned opaque. From within the archive, I couldn't see any of them. Milady, this way. Together, Schwartz and Weiss pulled my arms and guided me through the newly formed, pure white entrance. My heart was racing. Just knowing that the Book of Messinora was ahead made my legs tremble in anticipation, my excitement swirl. I can't wonder what the book is like. We soon arrived at the door, marked with a complete, complex, luminous magic circle. It was clearly locked tight, which made me even more tense. Here, milady. At the shoemail's behest, I reached out and touched the magic circle. My hand was instantly knocked back, and a spark of what felt like electricity shot through me. It was just like what happened whenever someone touched Schwartz and Weiss without permission. Eep! I cried, withdrawing my hand in surprise. Schwartz and Weiss looked up at me. Now register, milady. Can I enter? Before I could even process what had just happened, the two shoemails rejected my entry. Register with what? I asked for the days. The royal family. The simple response made the blood drain from my face. The archive containing the Gruchite could only be entered by those with royal blood. Ferdinand had told me that already. He had said that my commoner origins would prevent me from ever becoming queen, but after being allowed into the shrines and easily obtaining the slates of each element, some part of me had remained stubbornly optimistic. In hindsight, it was obvious that an archive containing something so important would vet entrance with a magic-enforced blood checker. What should I do? I needed to obtain the Gruchite this year, otherwise I wouldn't be able to save Ferdinand. It had been the best option available to me, and the path ahead suddenly seemed much bleaker. It would take me 3 years to be registered as a royal. To prevent skilled archduke candidates from being taken by force, archduke candidates were forbidden from moving to the sovereignty outside of marriage. In other words, I wouldn't only be able to enter the royal family by marrying Sigiswald, and our starbound ceremony would need to wait until after I came of age. That was 3 years away at the absolute least, which was completely useless. Ferdinand was getting married next year. Open, I mumbled, then slapped the door. My hand was blasted away again, this time with even greater force. I gazed from my hand to the magic circle. The sparks that made my fingers go numb, then struck the entrance again. Open! Again I was repelled, and with even more force. My hand throbbed, and a storm of emotions swirled in my chest. Frustration that the Gruchite was just out of reach. Despair that I wasn't able to save Ferdinand. Outrage that the royally magic circle rejected me. This all made me sick. Let me in! Letting my emotions run wild, I squeezed my numb hand into a fist and banged on the entrance as hard as I could. Sparks flew as my destructive mana clashed with the mana protecting the door. There came a sudden pop from my wrist, then another. The magic attack circle's counterattacks were destroying my charms from Ferdinand one by one, which snapped me out of my rage. In a panic, I pulled my hand away. Milady is dangerous, must be eliminated. Uh-oh. After my little outburst, Schwartz and Weiss must have identified me as a threat. The face stones on their foreheads lit up as they prepared to attack me. I couldn't let any more of the charms getting given to me be destroyed, so I muttered, I'm going, and started to head back. My shoulders slumped. Schwartz and Weiss followed after me, still on guard and ready to attack. Even upon re-entering the archive, the entrance remained opaque. I collapsed upon it and looked down at my hand, which was stinging and tingling. The part of my fist that had struck the circle was covered in red and black splotches, as though it had gotten seriously burned. Not even Ferdinand's charms had protected me fully. It hurts, I murmured, as I continued to stare at my wounds. Schwartz and Weiss closed the path we had opened, then hopped over and stood in front of the archive door. Weiss then passed through, at which point the entrance became transparent again. I could see everyone waiting with bated breath. Rosamund, Hildebrand exclaimed, but Anastasia stopped him from running over to me. He told everyone else to stand back, then entered alone. Rosamund, did you? I wasn't able to. The farthest door can only be opened by those registered as royalty. I see, Anastasius muttered, sounding regretful. He then caught sight of my hand and froze. What happened to you? The magic circle rejected me. Violently. I never thought this would happen. Leave the archive and be healed at once. I grabbed his hand and shook my head. What's going to happen to Ferdinand? A year won't be enough time for me to obtain the Grudershite. What should I do? Rosamund, calm down. Your mana. His instruction was pointless. It was never that simple. I shot Anastasius a hard glare and said, You intend to punish Ferdinand alongside Lady Detlinde, do you not? Would you be able to calm down if someone told you they were going to execute Lady Eglantine and your family entirely because of Lady Detlinde's actions? Anastasius gritted his teeth with a pained expression and blinked in confusion. How is that an appropriate comparison? You aren't married or engaged to Ferdinand, nor is he a member of your family. He is my guardian since before I was baptized, as well as my mentor and my doctor. He's equivalent to family. He counts among those I need to protect more than anyone or anything else, so why wouldn't I worry about him? How dare you threaten to execute him for the crimes of a woman he never wanted to marry to begin with? Especially when he's been drowning one potion after another to keep Arensbach afloat. Who wouldn't be furious when someone they care about is being treated so abhorrently? The moment I got emotional, my charms covering my body began to light up. They each filled with mana and started to shine. Oh no, at this rate, I'm going to crush friends. Shit. Come on, calm down. Calm down. That realization immediately cooled my head. I took deep breaths and compressed the mana that was swelling inside of me. The process was much easier than I was used to, and the charms dimmed before any of my mana could leak out. My staff really had evolved. Anastasius knit his brow. Equivalent to family, I'd hoped to light a fire under you to increase your motivation to obtain the Grudershite, but it would appear I had crossed some lines. Duh! I sighed, then plaintively began to cast healing magic on me. It is customary for married couples to be punished together, but Detlinde will only be punished after the situation in Arensbach has stabilized. In other words, when the royal family obtains the Grudershite, or when Hildebrand and Letizia come of age and marry, we will overlook you helping Ferdinand maneuver to a position where he can protect himself. Such an aspiration is still possible to achieve. I merely cocked my head at the prince, unsure what to say. It seemed that Ferdinand wasn't in immediate danger after all. Anastasius gave a self-deprecating smile. I truly must have lost myself to urgency. I acted too carelessly and completely forgot that you often do not share the common sense of most nobles. Although I spoke in a fairly provocative way to motivate you, what I just said now is so glaringly obvious that I'm sure Ferdinand understands it already. Ferdinand understands that he's going to be punished by association? I suddenly remembered our meeting with Eglantine after Detlinde's dedication whirl. Ferdinand had used a recording to prove that he had tried to stop his stubborn fiancée. Still, I was against him needing to prove his innocence simply because he was engaged to a troublemaker. Ferdinand will most likely have Arensbach under his thumb within the next half year, Anastasius continued. Rather than fret about him, you would do well to worry about yourself. About myself, I repeated. Was there anything I needed to be concerned about other than Ferdinand and Ehrenfest? I retract my earlier statement that my elder brother will take you as his third wife. If only a member of the royal family can obtain the Grudershite, then the danger you're in is vastly diminished. He gave a weary sigh, then peered down at me with a look of partial concern and added, As is your potential value to us. What? The danger I'm in? Potential value? We have already spoken to Ob Ehrenfest regarding these matters, since he told you nothing. Nothing at all. Then ask him for the details, Anastasius said, shaking his head in disbelief. It seemed that Sylvester and I were experiencing a bit of a communication failure. If you had managed to obtain the Grudershite, whether for yourself or to give to my brother, we would have needed to secure you by any means necessary. But if you aren't qualified to be a Zent candidate after all, we will need to rethink matters. He then escorted me out of the archive and delivered me to my retainers. I apologize that we made you clean all the shrines today, and as a warning, you would do well to keep a few more guards around you. On that note, Anastasius went off to have lunch with Eglantine accompanying him. As soon as they were gone, my retainers surrounded me. Lady Rosamund, what in the world happened? How did it look to all of you, I asked. As it turned out, the barrier had turned white and opaque as soon as Weiss and I went into the archive. My retainers hadn't been able to pass through, but nor had the royals who had managed to enter before. Tell us, what did you do behind the white wall, Lady Rosamund, Handler asked me. I could tell that my retainers wanted to ask the same question. Unsure how to respond, I turned to Magdalena. Her lips curled as she discreetly shook her head, indicating this was too important for me to discuss. I smiled and said nothing at all. I was unqualified. In what way, Hildebrand asked, curious, and what did you need qualifications for in the first place? Eglantine had said that she didn't want unnecessary conflict with the top-ranking duchy, so I refused to answer, and instead suggested that he ask Anastasius. I didn't want to say anything unnecessary that might make me even more involved with the royals, so I would let them decide how to respond to Hildebrand. The morning alone had served as an agonizing demonstration of why Sylvester and Ferdinand desperately wanted me to avoid getting involved with the royal family and top-ranking duchies. No matter how well we seemed to mesh, we were friends in name alone. They had so much more power than I did, meaning I would need to accept any unreasonable requests they made of me, and our priorities would seldom align. My only option to avoid their demands were to get powerful enough to refuse them or do my best to stay out of their sight. The events of this morning have left me famished, I said to Adelie, and turned away from Hildebrand. Let us have lunch. As you will, Lady Rosamond, she replied. Fourth bell just chimed, so it makes sense that you were hungry. Cornelius, prepare a seat for her. Cornelius had been peering down at me, his brow furrowed in concern, but he wasted no time carrying out his duty. He offered me his hand, which I took, and together we went over to my seat. Wait a moment, Rosamond, Hildebrand said. Dear, do not trouble Lady Rosamond with any more questions, Magdalena interjected. At that, everyone returned to their preparations, although I could tell they were still worried about me. The attendants poured tea, while the guards arranged themselves around their charge's seat. Hildebrand went off with Magdalena, though he kept shooting me troubled glances. After an awkward lunch spent mostly in silence, nobody had wanted to say anything. I dedicated my afternoon to translating. As I worked on a particular slate, I suddenly recalled my time with Dunkelfelger's history book. How is it that a king once came from Dunkelfelger? If one needed to be registered as a royal to obtain the creature-side, then how had such a thing been possible? The book was a very ancient record, so it hadn't offered any explanation, but it implied the existence of some other way to become king. Or perhaps someone from a subsequent generation had put that blood-checking magic circle in place to prevent kings arising from duchies other than their own? I can't believe they denied me my best method. Anastasis had said that it would be a very long time before Detlinde was punished, and that Ferdinand was no doubt enacting a plan to save himself. But I didn't know whether he was telling the truth. I wanted to contact Ferdinand about the danger, and make sure he was safe at the very least, but I had firmly been told not to worry about him. Lady Rosamond Hannelore glanced around very hesitantly and then continued in a quiet voice, Your sleeve. I glanced down and realized that my sleeve was stained with blood. The magic circle's counterattacks had done more than just scorch me. I thank you ever so much for your concern, Lady Hannelore, but Prince Anastasis has already healed my wounds. I'm quite fine. Pardon? Prince Anastasis used healing magic on you? I nodded, watching her quizzically. Anastasis had entered the archive and then refused to allow anyone else to join us, so who else could have treated me? Upon seeing my confusion, Hannelore carefully elaborated. Under normal circumstances, the royal family would never cast healing on another. They needed to dedicate their mind to Jurgenschmidt, so the very idea was apparently unthinkable. Healing my wound had been Anastasis' indirect way of apologizing to me, since his status prevented him from admitting fault or ending up in my debt. How was I supposed to figure that out? It won't make much of a difference anyway. If Ferdinand ends up being punished because of Detlinde, I'll never forgive Anastasis, no matter how much he apologizes. Time to go, Rosamond, Sylvester said. The past few days must have made him realize that simply calling my name wasn't enough, because he yanked the slate away from me without a moment's hesitation. I put away my writing tools, handed today's work to Magdalena, then left the library with Sylvester. Am I in danger? I asked as I made my way back to the dormitory. Prince Anastasis said there was some things you haven't told me. We'll discuss that later, Sylvester replied with a grimace, then smiled at me and said, You two must have had quite the conversation for him to have brought that up. We'll discuss that later. We looked at each other and let out heavy sighs. It seemed that Sylvester had gotten wrapped up in a lot of nasty business, too. You know, my dear adoptive father, today's events have made me painfully aware of why everyone wants me to stay away from the royal family. Sylvester regarded me with a thoroughly drained expression. Took you this long to understand, did it? Hate to break it to you, but you should have been quicker on the uptake. It's already too late. Wait, what do you mean by that? Oh, boy. It's already too late, girl. You would have been better off not getting involved with them at the very start. But now you're in too deep. Letters and a discussion. Sylvester and I spent the rest of our journey back to the dormitory conversing with each other and asking our retainers to schedule a meeting for after dinner. Upon our return, Lizetta rushed over to me. Welcome back. Professor Herscher is waiting for you both in the common room. Professor Herscher? Sylvester and I exchanged looks, then went into the common room. Herscher immediately stood out to us. In a room full of desperately busy adults starting here and there in preparations for the coming days, she was casually standing by the bookshelf reading. Herscher, Sylvester exclaimed, what are you doing here? Ob Ehrenfest, Lady Rosamond, she greeted us, though her eyes remained glued to her book. Only after she had returned it to its rightful place did she finally look it up at us. Back at last, I see. I come with a letter from Ferdinand. From Ferdinand, I repeated, but his Starmine ceremony was delayed. Do you mean to say he came to the Royal Academy anyway? The very same delay means he still assists in the Ehrenfest. As a result, while he cannot still attend the conference, I would imagine there is little stopping him from visiting the dormitory. One of his attendants gave this to me. That reminds me, Ferdinand had set out at an Archduke conference in the past, only to be summoned to the Royal Academy anyway. Perhaps that had happened again? Hersher pointed at the magic box sitting nearby and said, "Please open it at once, Ehrenfest. It looked too large for a simple letter, but the advantage was that only the Archduke could open it. I'm told that Ferdinand put some research documents inside as well to ensure that I would get it here swiftly. A rather cheeky move, wouldn't you agree? Would you not have neglected to deliver it until next winter otherwise?" I asked. "He simply knows you too well, Professor Hersher. Obviously." "Don't look so proud about that." Sylvester opened the box with a wry smile, and Hersher pounced at the documents inside. Once she had them in her hand, she began to skim them with a look of complete satisfaction. "What are they about?" I asked. "The library's magic tools. It would seem that they can be made more easily by splitting the functions of organizing and searching for documents. Still, the creation process is rather difficult, and it requires high-quality materials." "Magic tools that can organize and search for documents? Wait, does that mean I could put simplified versions of Schwartz and Weiss in my library?" "The two shoe mills were also responsible for guiding rails to the Gruterscheid, but that part wouldn't be of any use to me." "Professor Hersher, let me see them too," I cried. "You don't care about organizing documents, do you?" I jumped up and down, trying to at least glimpse the research, but Hersher raised it much higher than I could reach. "Hersher, that's not nice." "I come first, Lady Rosamund. These tools will be of much more use to me, as my documents will remain unorganized without them." She's right. I recalled the state of Hersher's laboratory and promptly conceded. She needed an organizing magic tool more than anyone. "I expect to have completed the finishing touches by the start of the next academic term," Hersher informed me. "You may come to my laboratory then if you are interested." "Expect me to wait until winter? I want to read them now." "You would do well to remember that you are supposed to be in Ehrenfest. Wait for the proper time and place." As everyone kept reminding me I didn't want to be seen wandering around the Royal Academy, I was here purely to assist the royal family, so visiting the Scholar Building or staying in Hersher's laboratory for my own enjoyment was completely out of the question. But I have my magic tools. No matter what I told myself, the thought of my very own Schwartz and Weiss was to die for. I started to contemplate how to get my hands on their production method, only for Hersher to look down at me and chuckle. "I shall write up a list of the necessary ingredients and deliver it to the dormitory. Perhaps you can hole up in my laboratory this winter to brew and whiff them." "Yes," I declared, my fist clenched in determination. Before I could say much else, Sylvester thwacked me on the head with some paper. "Rosamund, this one is for you," he said, holding out a letter from the box. I went to take it from him and then paused. What if there was invisible ink on it? Nothing had happened when he slapped it against my head, so there was probably nothing to worry about. "I can take it, right?" Ferdinand wouldn't carelessly use shining ink on a letter he was going to package with the correspondence, right? My fingers trembled a little as I reached out to accept the letter. Sylvester must have noticed because he gave me a suspicious look and said, "What's gotten into you?" as he handed it over. Will I be allowed to write him back?" I asked while checking the letter for shining ink. "Is it not wrong of me to worry about or contact him?" Sylvester seemed troubled all of a sudden. "You can respond to him, yes. I am sure he's going to give me a lot to think about, so let's delay our meeting until tomorrow." He gave the correspondence addressed to him to one of his scholars, then turned his attention to the eccentric professor. "Good work, Hersher. You can eat dinner with us tonight." "I appreciate the offer," she replied, "but I must return to my laboratory at once." "I see. Well, I won't stop you." After freeing Hersher with a breezy wave, Sylvester headed off to his room. I then did the same, firmly holding my letter from Ferdinand. After eating dinner and bathing, I went into my hidden room. Paper and ink had already been prepared for me to write my response, but I didn't have any shining ink, as expected, since I hadn't anticipated needing to write a letter to Ferdinand during the Archduke conference. There's so much I want to mention, like the silver cloth and the chance that he might be punished by association, but anything I write will end up being checked, so I need to keep it all innocuous. Well, I'm sure Sylvester will cover all the important parts. I signed and opened the letter, which was faced with the warning. I wrote this while everyone was absent for the Archduke conference, and got Eckert to include it with my letter to Sylvester. Per your response, under the assumption that it will be checked. He was evidently in a position where he could write but not read freely. "You know, Ferdinand, even I understand that my letters to you will undergo inspection." It was obvious that anything I wrote will be carefully examined not just by Ahrensbach but by Sylvester as well. Dissatisfied to have been thrust into such an annoying scenario, I started reading the letter written in a familiar hand. The first line of the first paragraph were a scolding. "So you have stopped writing to me. How am I to interpret that? You were the one who demanded this correspondence in the first place, so as a way to confirm that I am well." "I'm sorry." I hadn't sent Ferdinand a letter since Sylvester told me to cease my worrying and stop contacting him so often. He was well within his rights to complain. "There's so much I want to tell you," I grumbled, my lips pursed. I would need to settle for what Sylvester had told me, though. So I put pen to paper and wrote what could essentially be summarized as, "I need to be more careful now that I actually look my age." That alone wasn't enough to vent all of my frustrations, though, while I was at it. I mentioned that I was being urged to show the same concern for Wilfrid that I had shown Ferdinand when he was here, and that Wilfrid was far from pleased with the results. Nobody here would listen to my complaints, so just being able to write them down was surprisingly therapeutic. Getting all of that off my chest has really calmed me down. Of course, I can't actually send this. Ahrensbach would learn far too much about Ehrenfest's internal affairs. I folded up my sheet of complaints and started a new letter with my one-line summary and an additional note that I was indeed growing at an immense impressive rate. That settled that. I continued reading my letter from Ferdinand into it. In it, he explained that the nobles of Arensbach had also been made to participate in spring prayer, and that he had gathered plenty of ingredients in the process. Letizia had apparently refused the kindness-infused potions that Sergius had delivered to her, as she did not yet need potions of such a high quality. My stamina had once been so poor that I would end up immobilized in the blink of an eye, but Letizia could get by on normal rejuvenation potions. She had ended up deprived of mana since she had once, but she hadn't collapsed once during spring prayer. Ferdinand wrote that he had again been surprised to remember how sickly I was compared to a normal child. Well, I'm a lot healthier now than I was when we were around. I ended up bedridden a mere 3 times this past spring prayer, and I recovered after just 2 days of rest. How about that? I scribbled my response, filled with indignation, but the truth of the matter was that being compared to Letizia depressed me. It felt like I was still far away from being normal. You just need to improve, Rosemine, bit by bit. I turned my attention to the letter. Alongside this letter are some Veriner flowers I obtained while circling Arensbach for spring prayer. They are an ideal ingredient for making charms. I cannot do much with them myself, owing to my lack of a workshop, but I expect you are now capable enough to brew them with them on your own. So that was why the correspondence had come in such a large box. He had sent us some materials as well. A good number of my charms had just been broken, so it was good timing. Not too good, actually. Perfect. Classic Ferdinand. I read a section describing the ideal charms to make with the Veriner flowers, then continued. In return, there are a few things I must ask you to prepare before next year's Archduke Conference. First, a minimum of 300 sheets of maximum quality Fey paper. Ehrenfest and Jawanko published research on improving such paper, did they not? Use that to your advantage. For my workshop, I also require some Gestelferd leather, as well as Sonnenschlag and Regist face stones, also of maximum quality. Hold on a second. How is it a fair trade for a few measly flowers? I didn't know what Ferdinand intended to do with such materials, but his demands seemed pretty unreasonable. I would probably be able to find everything but the Fey paper in the workshop he had given me. Still, that was a big ask. Maximum quality Fey paper, huh? A minimum of 300 sheets meant that not even our supply of trauma paper would suffice. The noble children entering the orphanage this year had made me hesitant to produce more. Maybe I should ask Bridget after I get back to Ilgner? Or Ehrenfest? Our research into new uses for Ilgner's Fey paper had resulted in a joint research project with Jawanko, and it was possible that the province had invented another kind of paper in the meantime. If not, I would just need to have the children harvest trombays without selling the nobles, of course. Ferdinand was asking a lot of me, but I wrote that I would have to do my best to prepare everything. As I read on, however, his list of demands grew longer. He also wanted us to bring various items with us when we attended Ob Arensbach's funeral next summer, including some luggage and more food. I was starting to feel like he was using me as a very convenient tool. I'm busy too, you know. The letter continued, I do not like having to ask so much of you, so I intend to prepare some fish for you. In return, I will accept any requests. Yippee! I shouted. I'll get your paper and materials ready in an instant. Praise be to the gods. I made a note to tell Sylvester to send over the luggage that Ferdinand needed, then started humming to myself as I wrote down the fish I wanted to eat. I don't want tonadol or any other poisonous fish, but I do want plenty of spresh. That spresh ball soup we had was delicious. I also want fish that even commoner chefs will be able to skin. So, some of that and a few of these. Done. I grinned at my response, eager excited to have fish again after such a long time. Now I was really looking forward to summer. Such enthusiasm was tragically short-lived, however. My mood took a nosedive when I read the next part of the letter. What in the world drove you to revive an ancient practice during the Starbind ceremony? That's not... She didn't have a choice! I don't know much about the goings-on of the Archduke Conference. Hartman and Clarissa only ever reported that they were busy. According to Ferdinand, however, the Sovereign Temple and most duchies other than Ehrenfest were petitioning the royal family to have my engagement to Wilfrid cancelled. They wanted me to join the Sovereign Temple as its next High Bishop, and then teach Jürgen Schmidt how to perform religious ceremonies in accordance with the ancient traditions. I couldn't be sent to other duchies to do so while serving as the High Bishop in Ehrenfest, but such restrictions wouldn't be applicable in the Sovereign Temple. It had now been proven that there was a positive correlation between the amount one prayed and the number of divine protections one obtained, so reviving the old rituals and spreading the correct way to perform them would increase the mana average all across Jürgen. The Sovereign Temple was also proclaiming that bringing back the old rituals would allow a true Zend to be chosen. Arensbach already had a Zend candidate, so it was in fervent support of the Sovereign Temple's efforts. Georgine was actively asserting that by having Ferdinand and the other nobles participate in ceremonies, they would gain more divine protections and their harvest would increase. She was also riling the archducal couples of other duchies by saying things like, it is unjust for Ehrenfest to monopolize such valuable knowledge, and the entire country will benefit from Lady Rosamund becoming the sovereign High Bishop. Ferdinand wasn't yet married to Lady Detlinde, meaning that he couldn't participate in the Archduke Conference or stop Georgine from speaking her mind during tea parties and meals. He could hear reports from scholars in attendance who were present and complained to Georgine about her actions, but she would shut him down by saying that she was only speaking the truth. As the Lanzenhof princess has been refused, I expect negotiations with them to be unpleasant once we return to Arensbach. That is still preferable to having accepted her, but Ferdinand will need to be involved with said negotiations, but he already seemed to be mentally exhausted. He also decided to leave justice in Arensbach and was spending the Archduke Conference trying to keep Georgine's attention away from her duchy. As for Detlinde, she had apparently been fuming after an encounter with a tremendously rude woman in the Royal Academy's library. She was in a much better mood now, though the others in her duchy had managed to raise her spirits by saying that the revival of the old ceremonies might lead to her being chosen as the next Zent. It seemed to me that they were just humoring her by preventing any more hysterical tantrums before their foundation was fully died. None of them intended to actually stop her. Oof, Arensbach is going crazy. In response to the duchies that were siding with Georgine, Ehrenfest had attempted to protest. How would you fare if one of your Archduke candidates were taken by the Sovereign Temple, we had said? In the first place, such an act is forbidden. Unfortunately for us, we were fighting a losing battle. Ehrenfest and Frembeltag had already demonstrated that a duchy could improve its harvest by having nobles with plentiful mana take part in its religious ceremonies. And considering that most duchies were in dire straits, having to wrestle with mana shortage and worsening crop yields, Ferdinand thought that we were basically doomed. Even if we forestalled them now, we were guaranteed to fail next year. If you were to become the sovereign High Bishop, it would allow you to restrain the royal family and the Sovereign Temple, spread the traditional way of performing ceremonies and assisting other duchies. It would also free King Trarlcall from his current burden, if your efforts led to the establishment of a Zent by proper means. Ehrenfest and I would suffer, but nobody else. That was why everyone was searching for ways to get me into the Sovereign Temple. As you were brought into the Archducal family through adoption, if you were disowned and reduced to the status of an Archnoble, then it would be possible for you to move to the sovereignty. You, Sylvester, and Karstead will all need to agree, though. No matter how much pressure the royal family might put on you, they cannot use a royal decree to cancel your adoption. One thing that a royal decree could accomplish was canceling my engagement to Wilfrid. The king would simply need to retract his approval, which would return us to the time when everyone had been fighting for my hand in marriage, no matter what Sylvester tried to say or do. In general, do not refuse to assist the royal family. Doing so will only harm Ehrenfest's reputation further. Now that we are being treated as though we were on the winning side of the Civil War, we will surely face the envy of the losing duchies. At the same time, however, the victorious duchies will seek your assistance. Expect to be summoned and consulted, as I once was. And should you receive such a request, do not refuse. Instead, buy time. You must endure for at least a year, though do try to hold out for even longer. Ferdinand gave me a response for if the royal family tried to force my hand. I was already doing so much for them, so why should I agree to be reduced to an archnoble? He also advised me to tell fans of Ibarra's stories that I was so deeply in love with Wilfrid that I wanted to prevent our engagement from being cancelled under any circumstances. I appreciate the warning and advice, but I don't think I could pretend to be in love with Wilfrid. I've never been in love with anyone. Even as I climbed into bed that night, I continued to ponder my situation. So much had happened, which was probably why I woke up the next morning with a fever. You did spend all of yesterday morning outside, Allie said, while preparing some rejuvenation potions for me. At least today is Earth Day. You can rest as usual without fear of what others might think. The Abbess said that your discussion can wait until you've recovered. Seeing me bedridden had given Clarissa a minor panic attack. Lisletta was consulting her by saying that this was a regular occurrence for me. Clarissa, do you think I would end up in the Sovereign Temple, I asked? Ehrenfest cannot afford to lose you, Lady Rosamund, but fear not. She gave her chest a mighty thump. Hartman and I will protect you. I appreciated her enthusiasm, but Ferdinand had said that we were basically doomed. Sylvester must have been under an enormous amount of pressure. I doubt he would ever admit it, though, but he always acted tough and tried to hide the weirdest things from me. That was probably what Anastasis had meant yesterday. As someone from another duchy, what do you believe Ehrenfest should do, I prompted. If the Sovereign Temple wanted someone other than me, what would you think? Clarissa's expression flattened, then she gave me a look of complete seriousness. I would think it was the best opportunity we would ever have to earn favor with the royal family and other duchies. By complying with the Sovereign Temple, Ehrenfest would prove that it deserves its place among the victorious. We would need to negotiate a few terms, how long the arrangement would last, the order in which the duchies would be taught, and so on, but we would never have another opportunity to gain so much from the loss of a single Archduke candidate. She gave me a troubled smile. On the other hand, if we monopolize you, it will earn us the jealousy and ire of every other duchy. Because of my familiarity with Ehrenfest's internal situation, I understand why we cannot afford to lose you. But I would not have been so sympathetic back when I was living in Dunkelfelder. I would have been shocked to see Ehrenfest being so self-centered, especially when there must be hordes of people eager to watch the saint of Ehrenfest perform her miracles. That was a shame. Clarissa had come across as such a competent scholar before those last few words. In any case, I now had a better idea of how the other duchies viewed our situation. Sylvester had doubtless been going through hell while I was translating in the archive, becoming a Zent candidate and getting rejected for not being a royal. By dinner time, my fever had gone down, so I went into one of the dormitory's meeting rooms to speak with Sylvester. Florencia was with him, and she welcomed me with a smile. "It's good to see that your fever has gone down. Ferdinand told me what has been happening during this year's conference," I noted. Then took out his letter to me and my response. Sylvester read them both before returning the former and giving the letter to one of his scholars. "In any case," he said with a grin, "I don't intend to cancel your engagement or send you to the sovereignty." Florencia looked at us both, clearly worried. "Has the royal family said anything?" "They want me to hand over Rosemine since it'll replace their relationship with the sovereign temple and grant the other duchy's wishes. In their words, a deeper understanding of religious ceremonies will benefit the entire country. It doesn't matter, though. I'm turning them down." Sylvester had argued that the idea was unthinkable when most nobles still aggressively looked down on the country's temples. Plus, the royal family had promised that my involvement in the Archduke Conference and Starbein ceremony would be a one-time thing, and that it would solidify Prince Siggiswald as the next Zent. Demanding that I now join the sovereign temple was nothing short of outrageous. Sylvester had gone on to say that the royal family's reason for wanting my assistance, the strength of my mana, was also why Ehrenfest considered me such a crucial pillar of support. It would be unacceptable if both Ferdinand and Rosemond were stolen from us to support other lands, he had said. Besides, is it not against the law to move Archduke candidates to sovereignty? The Zent accepted my argument, Sylvester continued. I'm guessing he only asked me on the off chance that I might concede, since pretty much every single duchy is pushing for it. The thing is, he crossed his arms and told us the most important part of all. Siggiswald was in agreement with the other duchies. The first prince had apparently said that this was Ehrenfest's only chance to earn favor from all the other duchies, and that Jurgen Smith's highest priorities were performing the religious ceremonies, obtaining divine protections, and making everyone's mana more efficient. He was pushing for me to join the sovereign temple. Wait, what? When did this exchange take place exactly? Does neither Schwalqual nor Siggiswald know that I'm a Zent candidate now? I'm guessing that was before that. Everything that Sylvester was saying had to do with making me the sovereign high bishop, and Anastasia seemed to be the only person thinking about securing me as a Zent candidate. We had only visited the shrines yesterday, so perhaps Schwalqual and the others in the royal family were simply unaware? But Eglantine and Anastasia had presumably told them all about it. Or, wait, have they not told them anything at all? Anastasis hadn't been confident in my status as a Zent candidate before he accompanied me to the shrines. He had told me afterward that he was acting alone, and if Eglantine was keeping the purpose of the shrines a secret just to avoid starting chaos, then Magdalena wouldn't have known either. She must have noticed all the hullabaloo in the underground archive, but again, that only happened yesterday. Maybe the Zent is learning what happened as we speak? I was contemplating how much information was being shared among the royal family when I gave Sylvester a shrug. "I got a letter of invitation this morning," he remarked. "The royal family summoned me for a meeting 2 days from now. The Zent still seems to be on my side, so I'm planning to turtle up and wait for the Archduke Conference to end. No matter what anyone says, the only way an Archduke candidate can be moved to the sovereignty is through marriage." Sylvester intended to wait out the time limit, but if this new invitation was the result of the entire royal family learning that I was now a Zent candidate, then we were facing an entirely new situation. Well, I would like to begin. I think you're going to have a much harder time turning them down from now on. "Why is that?" Sylvester asked. He and Florencia were both staring at me in surprise. I directed Ottilie to bring us some sound blockers, then gave one to Sylvester and another to Karstedt, who was standing in his usual position as a guard. I didn't give one to Florencia, which made her look very concerned indeed. "The shock of what I'm about to say might be great enough to impact the baby," I said. "Sylvester, I will allow you to decide whether we take that risk." "Is it really that serious?" "Yes. I would even advise that you clear the room." Sylvester waved a hand and our retainers all exited, leaving only the two of us, Karstedt and Florencia. I gripped one of the sound blockers and made my declaration. "I'm a Zent candidate." Sylvester and Karstedt both yelped, their eyes wide in terror. "But that doesn't make any sense," Sylvester replied. "What are you saying?" "I don't really understand it either, but here we are. I just kind of went with the flow, doing as the royal family asked, and yeah. I prayed at the Royal Academy and in Ehrenfest Temple, then let Anastasius drag me to all the gods' shrines. That much had made me a Zent candidate, but then I had been told that I wasn't qualified since I wasn't registered as a royal. I'll spare you the details since I'm not sure whether I should be even saying any of this in the first place, but I expect that I'm closer to becoming the next Zent than anyone else in the country. I wouldn't actually be able to rule, though. My blood isn't registered as belonging to the royal family. I expect that the royals are about to put more pressure on us than ever before. How am I only hearing this now? It only happened yesterday! I wanted to tell him immediately upon our return from the Royal Underground Archive, but my letter from Ferdinand had taken priority. Then I ended up feeling fever. I was feeling better now, at least, which was precisely why I was here. No matter what we do, my engagement is going to be cancelled, I said. We can hope that a member of the royal family obtains the Grucheshite in the 3 years between now and my coming of age, but they will want me in their pocket in case they fail to manage that on their own. Anastasis retracted his claim that Sigistwald would take me as his third wife, but only so that he and the family could explore other options. The Zent might have been willing to respect Ehrenfest's circumstances and ignore the demands for me to become the sovereign high bishop, but I doubted he would turn a blind eye to the fact that I was their best option for installing a proper Zent for the Grucheshite as quickly as possible. My letter from Ferdinand was about me being taken by the Sovereign Temple, I said, but in any case, he wrote about how the royal family could force me to move this sovereignty. He also gave me some advice on how to cope if it came to that. We will need to consider what we will do if Ehrenfest is given a royal decree. Sylvester scrunched up his face. This was an issue bigger than anything to do with the Sovereign Temple. Not even an archduke would be able to refuse an order related to the next Zent and obtaining the Grucheshite. Perhaps we should summon Wilfrid as well, I said. The result of this could change his life. Sylvester contemplated the idea for a moment and shook his head. Nah, not this time. Are you sure? This really could change everything for him, couldn't it? It could, but will summoning him achieve anything? We won't be able to defy the king's orders no matter how we feel about them. And the last thing we need right now is Wilfrid causing a scene here at the Royal Academy. If the news sends him into a frenzy, or he leaks everything to his retainers, we'll just have even more problems to deal with. It was true that Sylvester and Florencia wouldn't need his help to make a case for why I should stay in Ehrenfest. On top of that, we didn't want him spreading the news that I was a Zent candidate before we even had a chance to formally discuss it with the royal family. I just won't have the time to spend with Wilfrid if this sets him off, Sylvester said. We need to decide on Ehrenfest's official position, plan how to negotiate with the royal family, and think about what conditions we should put forward. Well, furthermore, Wilfrid is still underage. He can't attend the Archduke conference, nor has he been summoned by the royal family. I see no reason to have him come here. Well, he'll need to accept whatever happens, but that shouldn't be a problem as his parents. We decide who he marries to begin with. Sylvester was speaking in the impartial manner of an archduke, but his brow was furrowed in a way that made his displeasure more than clear. The royal family didn't invite you to this upcoming meeting either, he continued. I'll negotiate as best I can, but I'm the archduke of a duchy that isn't a very influential player on the country stage. The result may not be the one you want, so I want you to be prepared for whatever might happen. My only choice was to leave all the negotiating to Sylvester and Florencia. I understood that perhaps perfectly well. I have not forgotten that you saved me and my family all that time ago, I said. Although things seldom go as I expect, I've always tried to carry out my duties as an adopted daughter. Thus, as long as you continue to protect my family and those in the temple, as well as the Gutenbergs, then I will obey any decision that you make as the Archduke. I could tell Sylvester was gritting his teeth. His frustration betrayed his love for me, and as I basked in the joy of that realization, I handed a sound blocker to Florencia. If you are both invited, then she needs to know as well, Sylvester. Please explain everything to her. Sylvester opened his mouth, but he was so overwhelmed that no words came out. Florencia smiled. Based on the urgent look on her face, can I assume that we do not have time to waste on your agonizing, she asked, urging him to speak. The truth is... Upon hearing that I was a Zent candidate, Florencia froze, smile and all. Then after a pause, she placed a hand on her forehead. I thought that I was used to her surprises after the winter reports, but perhaps not. The royal family likely wishes to avoid any unnecessary chaos, I said, so do not tell anyone what I've told you. That much is obvious, Sylvester replied. The real mystery is the royal family's endgame. Eglantine had told me that the royal family hoped to maintain the status quo. In their eyes, the best result would include avoiding any war, or another war between the greater duchies, and establishing Sigistwald as the next Zent. Then I realized something. That was only what Eglantine wanted. Anastasis said that he hoped to ease her fears, so perhaps they were the only two who felt that way. I definitely hadn't heard the Zent or Sigistwald himself speak a word about wanting me to obtain the Grucheshite and become the first prince's third wife. Given how poorly information seemed to flow between members of the royal family, it was dangerous to jump to conclusions about what they desired. You are correct, I said to Sylvester. We do not know what the royal family wants. Thus, let us stop thinking about their aims and instead consider how we can squeeze as much value for Ehrenfest out of them as possible. Rosemine, Sylvester exclaimed. He and Florencia were both taken aback by my suggestion. After saying that he wanted me to become the first prince's third wife, Prince Anastasis declared that Ehrenfest should deal with its own problems. The royal family will not show us any consideration, nor will they care about what will benefit us most. That is why we must focus on our own interests. Unlike using last year's publishing negotiations with Dunkelfelger as guidance, let us think of a term you will refuse to budge on, one you think you can probably secure, and one that will mark the sweetest victory if obtained. Sylvester exchanged a look with Karsten, then get put on a wry smile and said, You're sounding a lot like a merchant. It seemed unlikely that his meeting with the royal family would immediately turn into a hardcore negotiation, but adopting the right mindset couldn't hurt. I decided to put forth basic conditions for whether the discussion was about me entering the Sovereign Temple or my being a Zent candidate. Now, as for my 3 terms, I refuse to accept there being a limitation on the number of retainers I can bring to the sovereignty. If I send me to the Sovereign Temple, then I will ask to be treated as an Archduke candidate, not an apprentice blue shrine maiden. I will also attempt to negotiate for more books that can be found in Ehrenfest's bookroom. Come on, Rose, Mind Sylvester said with a grimace. That stuff's valuable to you, not Ehrenfest. He was probably used to merely reviewing whatever options his scholars put together and picking the ones he thought were best. If you think so, then make some suggestions of your own. We don't yet know how many we can tell about my circumstances, so we can't just consult your scholars as you normally would. You will all need to come up with your own ideas to secure value for Ehrenfest. Sylvester and Florencia finally came to their senses and started considering what would benefit our duchy. They had spent much more than enough time listening to scholars and discussing things with the other obs attending a conference, so it didn't take them long to get into the swing of things. I wrote their streams and suggestions on my diptych. Sorting them all based on their importance would make it much easier for us to turn the upcoming negotiations in our favor. The royal family would presumably state their intentions without inquiring about our own. But we can still negotiate with them, I said. Make it clear that we are willing to cooperate with them, but only if the arrangement is mutually beneficial. You must be firm about that. Last of all, tell them that they will need to speak with me as well. After all, they will need my consent if they wish to cancel my adoption. Okay, yeah. Oh, boy. I will get to work on the next video as soon as I can, and I'll see you guys in the next one.